Good morning, folks. It's Andy Stautz at Stautz Law. I am back today for another talk about Indiana estate planning. Today's topic is why new parents need a will. And this is a topic near and dear to my heart because a few weeks ago, my wife and I welcomed our first child. So we've recently redone our estate planning, and lots of our friends are in similar spots. We've got kids, maybe new babies, or maybe you've just been meaning to do it for a while, and it's like, okay, why? Why is this on your to-do list? So I'm going to go through what I think are the biggest, most salient reasons. There are probably others. But I'm thoroughly persuaded all new parents need a will. Why? Reason number one, as soon as you have a baby, your baby is now a 50% intestate heir if you die. That means if you die without a will, the day after your baby's born, your baby is entitled to half of your property, not your spouse. Well, your spouse gets half, but your spouse doesn't get everything, is what I mean. So a lot of people assume that their spouse is going to get everything. It's not true. I made a video about that like a few weeks ago. So number one reason is to override the rules that you would get if you didn't have a will. And the reason you want to override those rules is because it's really inconvenient for a child to get a bunch of property. I mean, you need to establish a guardianship for that property. And, if one spouse is still living, it's not necessarily a huge deal, but it's probably not what you want, not what you want to be dealing with. Your spouse is going to be having the worst time of their life, right? You don't want to be there trying to set up that stuff. And if you were both to die, you really want to make some provision to avoid having your baby directly inherit a bunch of property. Again, because guardianships are an absolute pain. And because when a guardianship ends at 18, it ends. And now you've got, this young adult with no guidance at all. So avoiding intestate succession, avoiding guardianship, you can put a testamentary trust in your will. So you don't need to do a full expensive trust planning right now. You just need a backstop. Okay, worst case scenario, we've got this will that says where the property goes. And in the case of both spouses dying, you can set up a trust like in the wills themselves, an emergency last minute, here's what it does. Again, avoiding guardianship, putting some structure around the inheritance so that you're not, leaving your child with a mess or a lump sum inheritance or whatever. And the other reason, also related to guardianships, is you should use the chance in your will to designate a guardian of the person. So who's going to raise your child? That's the remaining spouse. But in the event of a common disaster, you want to, if you've got an opinion on who raises your kid, you probably do, you should put it down there. So, like I said, it doesn't need to be complicated. I'm not saying every new parent needs to come up with some complex plan, do a trust administration, any of this. Just having a will to override the half to kids, intestate succession, half to spouse, half to kids, just having a will that says all to my spouse is just a really important backup plan. And, we can price out the expected value of that. You could say, okay, well, what's the risk one of us dies while our children are minors? whatever you think that risk is. If you're an actuary, you can figure it out. What's the cost if we mess it up? We don't have a will. Okay, what does a will cost? And I think that uh, I think it's like insurance, right? It's a backstop. It's a worst case scenario plan. But the expected value is positive, and you'll be really glad you had it if you need it, and hopefully you don't. And lastly is, it's a start, right? For lots of people, life events are triggers to start doing estate planning, which they're going to need to do at some point. And so it's kind of good to like have something down that you can revise later versus, being older, having more complicated property and family affairs, trying to do everything for the first time. It's like, you're a grown up, time to have an estate plan. It'll save your family and loved ones legal trouble and emotional trouble. So that's the pitch. Get it done. Hire an attorney or do it. You just like get something done. I think hiring a professional is worth it, but if cash is tight, that's up to you. Okay, that's what I've got today. I think I'll do a follow-up one, like a to-do list that includes more than just the will, because there are a couple other things you want to do to make sure your property affairs are in order. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.